All right, we're on live. Here we go. This is the Outlaw of College Football podcast, and today we actually have a guest. It's my second time only doing the whole guest thing, so bear with me, guys. I'm a little new at this, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, brother.
You bet. My name's Nathan Brown. I go by the nickname Bomber. I have a couple of shows on YouTube. One, the Big 12 Mafia show, and the other one's the Holy Rivals. In my title, there below me are my two Twitter handles, and we cover everything that we can think of to do in college football. We do BYU, we do the Big 12 and each one of the Big 12 schools, and then we do overall college football news like realignment, things having to do with legislation or the college football playoff. So a great couple shows. I have a few partners. One of them is the Wild Ute, who's on the Holy Rivals show with me, and then a couple of contributors, Moen Sports and Immaculate View. So we have a fun time, and we try to get our shows out a few times a week.
Sounds like some varied opinions might take place on there, especially with you and the Utah guy, right?
Yes, very much so. We don't always agree in everything, but we have a fun time doing it.
Rhino 26 is in the house. He's one of our regulars. I just want to give a big shout out to him real quick. I brought you on here because I did a couple of podcasts a few months back, and people sort of sneered at me and laughed at me, but I told them that, the Big 12, with the exit of Oklahoma and Texas, somebody's going to have to take up the mantle as a blue blood, and someone's going to come out of there as a blue blood, in my opinion. That just always happens. It's a natural progression type thing with me. When you have a conference, someone's naturally going to become that team. And to me, I thought BYU might be that team because they've had past success. They were the only, and still to this day, the only true G5 school at the time, which they are no longer, that won a national championship.
Right.
But they look real impressive on the road against Arkansas. And I just wanted to, get your thoughts on that and see if you think maybe BYU can take that mantle and become a blue blood for the Big 12.
Certainly the potential is there, right? That's the greatest thing about the Big 12 is the fact that we have teams from year to year that could become that blue blood on a season by season basis. As far as who has the potential for that ultimate growth to over a period of time build to be a super strong program, I wouldn't look past BYU. Besides the fact that they have a history and there's a lot of people in the program through historical means that would justify their standing. More importantly, they have the support of an entire religion, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, behind them, which builds in millions of followers. So that by itself gives it a little bit of an advantage that you might say over a general school. But I don't want to put them over anybody in the Big 12 right now. We got to earn our stripes. It's going to take some time. But I think the potential is there for them to do that, along with several other schools.
Right. Well, see, BYU actually impressed me a few years back in that they've been able to beat the big guys for quite some time. I mean, this ain't something new to BYU. Now, the Utah fans will try to come in and say that, they basically have taken the mantle in that state, but, you guys are still the only ones to win a national championship over there in that state. I think it was a few years ago that y'all actually beat 5 Pac-12 schools in the same year.
Yes,
so that's
right.
why I say that. And like you alluded to, the Mormon religion is sort of like the Catholic religion with Notre Dame, in that you have a large support system because of that. I know you don't want to continually to lean on that all the time, but it's there. The large support system is there. Whereas with these teams like Cincinnati and UCF coming in, they don't really have that little bit of an advantage, so to speak.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think the church is a great supporter of the program. I want to be very clear, though. The church doesn't give any money to run the athletic department at BYU. That's all paid for either through donations, through gate receipts and media contracts, other ways to earn income. But the money doesn't come from the church. There's some of those misnomers out there that think that the church is writing checks to underwrite BYU's success or failure, and it's simply not true. So while the advantages are there, there's a lot of people in the faith that follow the program. There's a lot that follow other schools. For instance, the University of Utah, 50% of their population is LDS. So they might not be BYU fans. They might be Utah fans. So, there's challenges with every university, and certainly BYU has some of those.
Well, that's sort of like my team, Alabama. A lot of people think, man, how can y'all afford to give Nick Saban $11 million contract and all this stuff, and when you could be putting it towards academics and that kind of thing. But like you said, the University of Alabama has the football team has a separate account from the university. So they don't get money from the university directly. Actually, they do give money back to the university when they get donations. If they have some extra money, they try to put it into other sports and that kind of thing, because the football actually pays for itself and a bunch of other sports as well. So those people that get on this kick about, we spend too much money on football, actually without football, a lot of these athletic programs won't exist. They won't have these other sports because the football gives to those sports.
Right. Yeah, and I think the underwriting from the football to the rest of most of college athletics, underwriting their other sports, you would say maybe the Olympic sports, that's absolutely true. In most cases, now there's been others where they run out of money, like Washington State. It owes millions and millions of dollars back to their to their university from the athletic department. They're actually running a deficit. The University of Cal Berkeley is very, very indebted to the university. So not all programs run at a profit.
Right. J.D. Wilmoth chimes in. He says, the way the conference looks right now without Oklahoma and Texas, it's going to be a cream puff conference except for maybe BYU and Utah. He's thinking that BYU and Utah is probably going to dominate the Big 12. What's your feelings on that?
Dominate is an iffy word. I respect the Big 12 for how competitive it is. I don't think any one school, at least for a while, is going to be able to say that they're going to dominate the conference. What we'll have to all get in the back of our heads is with this new college football playoff alignment, it's going to take a while for some of these new conferences or conferences that have included new schools to sort of come to a part where you could say that it's running in a moderate way, meaning everybody's had the same opportunity. Right now, Utah looks really good in the Pac-12. I've warned them, though, that the competition in the Big 12 is much more difficult than it's been historically, at least recently, in the Pac-12. So while Utah is a great program, I wouldn't necessarily hand the keys to the kingdom to them or BYU for that matter and say they're going to immediately take over. I think it's going to take some time to figure out who those programs are going to be.
Yeah, Mars Jam said maybe Kansas State lost last week, but they are a great team as well. Yeah, Kansas State's a great program ever since Bill Snyder come on board. People don't realize, but Kansas State used to actually be the losingest program in college football history.
That's right.
Until Bill Snyder come on board. So, yeah, Kansas State probably have a little something to say about that as well. But Oklahoma State, you would think they'd be able to take up the mantle. They can't even beat South Alabama, right? They can't even keep it close.
Boy, look at Baylor, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, even though they're still up there, they had a not great game this last weekend. So, I mean, there's several programs that are normally up that this year are not, and vice versa. There's some schools that aren't always perennial greats that are stepping up and trying to fill that gap. Kansas is 3-0. They play BYU this weekend. Whoever comes out of that game a winner is going to have a leg up in running for the conference championship.
Yeah, I didn't know. I had questions about Kansas this year, whether that was just like a one-hit wonder type year.
Right.
But it looks like they're following it up with a little bit of success. So maybe they're the real deal. I also saw a little snippet the other day. It was pretty funny. They said that Duke, North Carolina, and Kansas are all undefeated, and Kentucky are all undefeated in football, man. That sounds like basketball royalty, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, these schools that don't perennially, you're not known for football programs are doing well. I mean, Duke has played well the last 3 weeks. I think that there's a lot to be said for parity because of the NIL age and also the free transfers basically that are happening now between schools. Parity is trickling down. It's not just the blue bloods that are getting those great players. If they're sitting on the pine at Alabama, who obviously is cream of the crop, and you're a 4-star, but you're third on the depth chart, you're going to want to go somewhere else and be a starter. So over time, that's going to make other programs have a better chance year to year.
That's right. We sort of started this podcast at a weird time, so we're not going to have as much traffic today. Usually when I start them at night, we have about 30, 40, 50, 60 people in here.
Right. Those are good numbers.
It's a little slow today because of the time we started, but I wanted to go ahead and get this out of the way. So, because in case you had some other things you had to do and whatnot. But if you guys don't matter, the ones that are in here, just jump out of the chat for a second and hit that like button and share it out to a few people. Maybe get a little traffic in here for us. Also, you'll see these people with the badges. That's because they're in the Outlaw Posse. It's a membership for the Outlaw Posse. It's $2.99 a month, 75 cents a week. You just hit that join button next to the subscribe button, and you'll be deputized and have your badge and be in the Outlaw Posse.
I love it.
Now, I did want to get your opinion on some other things because people tend to think that I'm a little biased towards time Deion Sanders because I've never really liked him. But this past week with Colorado and Colorado State, there was a few plays. Everybody's really been concentrating on the hit that the guy did. I can't remember his name. He hit Travis Hunter.
Right.
And he just, the way he collapsed, man, it just looked awful. But even Deion Sanders said that it wasn't a dirty hit, that's just football.
Right.
But the one that I think that people are forgetting is Shedeur Sanders trying to poke that guy in the eye.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's your take on all this? What's your take on time Deion Sanders and the Colorado program going forward and how things panned out this past weekend?
Well, for one thing, their viewership numbers are no joke. They've gone 7 million, 8 million, and 9 million people watching each game, and it continues to grow from week to week. So from that standpoint, you got to respect how much attention they're getting. Now, Coach Prime, Deion is a motivational guy. He always was. He was when he was in college. He was when he was in the pros, and now he's a coach. So nobody should be shocked that he can motivate athletes to play. The only thing that people questioned at Colorado was the high turnover, 86 new players from last year to this year. They questioned whether these HBCU athletes could step into big programs and immediately have an effect. And last, how easy is it to get a program that had been a historical loser? They were 1-11 last year, and raise them up to be playing good football. All I will say is two things. One, their competition up to now doesn't look like it's been great. They were down to one possession with Colorado State and TCU, and while those are good programs, would they rate right now at the top of each of their conferences? I would say probably not. So the teams that they've played, there's still questions on how good they really are. Now this weekend they have Oregon, and if they go into Autzen Stadium in Oregon and they beat Oregon at home, everything changes, right? Perception will change, especially with Travis Hunter out. So I would just tell everybody, yeah, you can, the con time and all these other nicknames. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying let time play out, and then we'll find out if they are actually frauds or not. I'm going to say that they're still probably an 8-win team. I think they have enough star power on their team that they can win. If they play well, they can win 8 games. Are they going to win the conference? No, they're not going to win the Pac-12. And there's 4 automatic losses that you probably could put on the list, and that would be they have to beat Utah, they have to beat USC, they have to get through Oregon today, and then I'm not sure if they play Washington. But I mean, those are some tough games to get through the conference. They'll have to beat some really good teams. That's how I'd say the jury's out on whether it's a con or if it's not.
Right. And I tell people, they think it's all based upon wins and losses with me, but it's not really that. It's just I definitely really never liked Deion Sanders as a person because I feel like sometimes he hides behind religion a little bit and he just uses that to pat himself on the back, that kind of thing. I remember back in the day, I don't know if you're as old as I am, but he was doing an interview after a baseball game, or actually Tim McCarver was doing an interview with somebody, and Dion come in and poured water or something on his head because McCarver had questioned him about playing two sports.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And instead of him just allowing for, disagreement and debate, he goes in there and pours something on the man. And ever since then, I've sort of had a disdain for him, man, because he does stuff that just, I guess you could say it's not really etiquette in what you consider college football. You had problems in the HBCU with Eddie Robinson Jr. Doing stuff to antagonize people. And then, people made mention of the fact that he was on the sidelines adjusting his son's gold chain during a football game. And it's just stuff that it just comes across as just almost thuggish in a way.
I think he does that really quick. I'll just say to that, I think he does that to he uses those as motivational tools, whether it's motivating himself or telling other people, you need to respect me and I'm going to demand that respect. I don't like that about Dion. I've never liked that self-promotion stuff. I liked when he played football, though. I loved him at Florida State. I loved him at Dallas and San Francisco. Those are amazing stories, and he won Super Bowls. So you have to respect his talent. His attitude and some of the flamboyant stuff he does that now his son is doing, Shedeur, that was really disappointing. That's the first time I'd seen Shedeur do anything that didn't reflect extremely highly on him or his dad. So hopefully that doesn't continue and it was a one-off.
Right. And I've always had a problem with him wanting to be called Coach Prime. He was always complaining about people not calling him Coach at Jackson State. Said, y'all call Nick Saban Coach Saban. Why don't y'all call me Coach? And, I don't have a problem with that, calling him Coach Sanders. But when he adds some kind of little weird cartoon character name connotation to it, it sounds like the Transformers to me.
Right.
Coach Optimus Primus Jackass or something,
Right. I get you. I understand what you're saying.
It's just he wants this respect from everybody, but it seems to me like he's not willing to earn that respect quite yet. He just some of the stuff that he says or does, and that whole Travis Hunter thing bothers me too. And the fact that I said this a few weeks back, it's like, man, him playing two ways like that's a lot of snaps. He's going to end up getting injured, and sure enough, he ends up getting injured. And one guy brought up the fact that, well, he played two ways in high school, so he's a two-way player. Yeah, but that's high school, man. There's a lot of players that play two ways in high school. If it was just a few gimmick plays, because we see that all the time. A player plays on both sides of the ball, but he only comes in like 4 or 5 snaps a game. But this guy's putting in 60, 70 snaps a game, man. I just think that he's putting Travis Hunter's health at risk by doing that.
Yeah, and do you think, to me, I watched that hit probably 100 times yesterday when it was clipped into Twitter, and honestly, I'm not even, it seemed like a freak injury, didn't it to you? It was like he went there and I wouldn't call it cheap, but it was definitely an intimidating hit he did on the sideline. But it didn't look to me, he didn't take his knees out from underneath him. He didn't even really lower his shoulder. He basically just got in the guy's way when he was running full speed. So I definitely don't think it was a dirty hit. I think it was an intimidation hit. And Prime himself came out and basically said, look, he's just out there playing football. All this nonsense of threatening him and everything is ridiculous. We don't send people to jail for bad hits. Now, should we sometimes? Some of the horrible hits people get either at their knees or at their head, I don't know, maybe, if you think you could determine there was intent. But it's football. I mean, it's not ticky-tack sport. It's all about violence and bringing bodies together. And I don't think that was any worse or better than 1,000 hits that happened on Saturday.
I give Dion a lot of grief, but what he said in that moment was actually a good thing. I actually like what he said. And Dion come up in a time when you and I come up where that was just a normal hit.
Absolutely.
That's just something that was like Dion was probably like, oh, well, I did that numerous times to other players when I was playing the game. So,
well, you remember when Jim McMahon got picked up by that defensive lineman after he threw a pick when he was at Minnesota, picked him up and slammed him down to the ground, literally in the middle of a play. It was like a wrestling move, like a suplex. He totally picked up Jim McMahon and threw him down like a rag doll. Jim McMahon was never healthy again. And so those days are gone. They protect quarterbacks. They protect people from getting hit with the crown of their helmets. So it's not like it used to be in the 80s and 90s, even the 70s, where you could take a forearm shiver and just clothesline people. Those days are gone. You can't do that anymore. So, like I said, I don't think it was any worse or better than thousands of other hits that happened on Saturday.
Real quick comment from Mara Jams, too. I wonder if they will fire Mike Gundy. Think Mike Gundy's safe?
I don't think he's safe. I think the last year and a half, between the recruiting issues he's had with NIL and some of his ideas with player development, I think he might be in jeopardy. If they lose 2 more games this year, I think he could get fired.
Yeah. A lot of people point to the fact he's got like a $25 million buyout or something, a real steep buyout.
He does. But look, T. Boone Pickens' family could write a check
exactly.
to buy him out of that, right? But anymore, money is just a marker. It doesn't really matter. It's transitory. People have it. People don't have it. The $25 million buyout to me is nothing. If you want to make a change, like Colorado needed to make a change by bringing in Dion, if you want to win in nowadays football, you got to invest in your systems, and your coach is like number 1 in that.
That's right. So I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm 53. He might be. I'm a man. I'm fired. Right? You know what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 53, and I could lose my job any day. So yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with it, to be honest.
One more thing I'm gonna touch on real quick. I'm gonna bring something up real quick. I showed it to you off air. I got to pull it up first. Got something about Lincoln Riley here. Seems like Lincoln Riley is now taken to censoring reporters.
Right.
He has banned this guy for can you see that?
I did. I saw the news on it yesterday. Yeah.
Can you see that up there on the
monitor? Yeah, I can see it on your screen. Yep.
Okay. All right. It says the reason why he banned him was he reported on a conversation 2 players had while preparing to talk to the media. Number 2, he asked a question when a press conference had concluded. And number 3, he spoke to players and coaches in an area that wasn't designated for the media. This guy goes on to say that, but a 2-week suspension, talk about overreaction. What's your thoughts on Lincoln Riley? You think he's a little over the top with this?
I think Lincoln Riley is soft as Jell-O, and where before I actually thought he might be on the fast track to the NFL. He, could easily turn around USC. I do not believe that anymore. They got worked last year twice by Utah, and in that second game, in that championship game, he didn't show any adjustments. It just shows like he's close-ended. And I don't think he has this huge ability to increase the productivity of his team. Now, they're undefeated still this year. They could definitely prove some things by the end of the year. But things like this, where you're shutting down a local beat reporter for talking to players and maybe leaking a little of information you didn't want out there, I think is extremely soft. And as far as I'm concerned, all it does is make him look weak. So he can continue to do that, but I guarantee you the guys in the Pac-12 and then next year in the Big Ten, they're going to make him look silly if he continues with this kind of behavior.
Yeah, it says at the top of this article, he said he's already talked about Lincoln Riley having a strange demeanor this season, whether reading a weird prepared statement after a game or berating officials every single week.
Right. Well, he knows. He knows that he's in a weak position. I think he knows his job is being questioned. They gave him the keys to the kingdom. They gave him a private jet to use anytime he wants with his family. I mean, they basically turned the entire organization over to the guy. And instead of doing what Dion did, taking a hands-on approach and drilling down and turning over the roster, he basically came to USC saying, I took the cream of the crop from Oklahoma, and that's what I'm going to win with. And he's losing recruits left and right. They are bringing some recruits in on NIL deals, but I think you're starting to see blood in the water around him.
Well,
He better show out, or else this year might be really rough for him.
Well, the thing is, man, he makes these statements that just make himself look stupid, man. He
I agree.
backs himself into a corner with a lot of stuff, him and Colin Coward. And, I mean, he made the infamous statement of you can't recruit to Oklahoma, and now Oklahoma's out-recruited them the past 2 years, and Oklahoma just passed them in the recruiting rankings this year, so that's 3 years in a row that Oklahoma has out-recruited him. What he meant to say, I guess, was that he can't recruit to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think that was just him with a bunch of smoke in the air. At the end of the day, Oklahoma is a blue blood. They're a power. They're going to be able to get recruits in there.
And, he makes disingenuous statements that, we can see right through. I mean, it's like he's talking to us like we're stupid. He said, well, I don't get Oklahoma players. I get players out of the transfer portal. And we all know what he done. While he was still at Oklahoma, he lured those players into the portal, which is tampering. Yes. You can't prove it, but it's tampering. And the NCAA needs to come up with some rules, just like the NFL. Maybe they can sit down with the NFL and come up with some rules for tampering and these players just up and leaving and transferring 3 or 4 times. I don't think they can do it anymore, though. I think they did put some kind of rule in place where they can only transfer once, and then the second time it had to be an extenuating circumstance of some sort.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, UNC couldn't get that player in that Mac Brown wanted, and that was because he was on his 3rd transfer. So, yeah, they're trying to tighten those up. But you and I both know there's ways around those rules. The one thing that the NCAA is really good at is creating rules and guidelines that are so paper thin you can see through them. They're easy to get around for any organization that has the resources and money to do it.
Sergeant Pickles is in the house. And by the way, Sergeant, your Washington Huskies are looking rather well. Those Huskies look like they might be a contender for a playoff spot. USC better not pull the prima donna card in the Big Ten, or they will learn quick that it isn't going to work, says Sergeant Pickles.
Yeah, Sergeant Pickles is one of my guys, by the way. So I'm glad he came over and started watching your show. I hope he subscribes. In fact, anybody that comes over because you followed my link, please subscribe to this show. Outlaw has a great product, and I want you guys to all subscribe for everything that he does.
Yeah, I intermix a lot of comedy with mine too. That some people will not, they don't really have a taste for. But for the most part, I throw some facts in there as well. But I've really been impressed with your podcast and how far it's came. And I always wanted, like I said, I've always done BYU videos and they've done well. So I decided, if I'm going to do another BYU video, I was going to get someone in here with a little more knowledge about BYU,
right?
And, the Big 12 in general. So the same thing.
Well, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help. And next time we do this, let's do it when we have a little more notice to plan, and we'll do a prime time show. And then I can bring in a bunch of people for sure.
That's right. Like I said, I done it at a weird time today. My internet, I had an issue with AT&T fiber. Had to iron that crap out, and it is what it is, right?
Right, exactly right. Yes.
When you're going live with these things, you never know, man.
No, you don't. And I think your show is really good because it brings in another flavor, right? There's a lot of different regions of the country that don't have the greatest coverage for whatever reason. Their fans aren't passionate. Yours is definitely one of them that is. So I try to get in contact with as many people that I know are passionate about the work, and those are the people I like to associate with. I mean, I'm on your show now. I'm definitely going to bring you on my show later. So that's the type of thing that really means a lot to me. And on Koo's Corner, he does great shows, right? I mimic and started my show basically some of the ways that he does his. Now, my show's different now, but certainly when he brings you on, that's a show I pay attention to. So I want to encourage everybody to stick around on YouTube and find these contributors that you'll see us on and follow them. They're the ones you should be subscribing to and supporting.
That's right. And like I was saying, you are a BYU guy, just like I'm an Alabama guy, but I've seen that you have a national edge about you. That's
right.
The kind of podcast I like. I like a little national flavor. I don't want to just be niche down to one team, but I do understand, that at some point you do have to touch on BYU and Utah as well.
Right. I think that's true. The question, Stephen G had a question here. He says, Big 12 Mafia, what does it feel like the Hateful Eight, or does it feel the Hateful Eight is dead? It definitely is losing some of its sting. I will say that. I think because Oklahoma and Texas left, took the oxygen out of the room. Now, who are the Hateful Eight supposed to hate? That pull is gone now, right? So now you have a conference that's being remade in Brett Yormark's image, and they might market the Hateful Eight a little bit. I mean, there's something, certainly money and brands, but as far as I'm concerned, all the new schools that are in there, they don't really care about that Hateful Eight thing. And so without that pressure to keep that up in the conference, it could fade away.
Yeah, Brett Yormark's been real impressive to me. He did exactly what you needed to do when that happened. He went out and got the 4 best G5 schools, teams that have been deserving to be at the Power 5 level for quite some time, like BYU. And while the Pac-12 just sat on their thumbs and listened to the Big Ten, that was their big mistake, was listening to Kevin Warren.
Absolutely.
Kevin Warren is a snake in the grass. He got them to do the kumbaya, hold our hand with the ACC. We're gonna stand up to the big bad SEC and Big 12. And in reality, he asked the Pac-12 not to expand, and it seemed like maybe he was doing that for nefarious reasons, because within a few years, they talk about not expanding, and then they take the Pac-12's 2 biggest markets,
right,
USC and UCLA, and then they try to say they're not going to go after Oregon and Washington because they don't want blood on their hands. Well, you absolutely got blood on your hands at this point. You took the 2 biggest money makers. So the Big Ten trying to act all high and mighty and above the fray, it's just not playing with me.
And it's not true. You have the thread of the story correct. There's no way that they were going to get out of the blame for basically being the trigger that killed the Pac-12. It's not the 4 corner schools. It's not even Oregon and Washington. It's UCLA and USC. The minute they were gone, there's no way they were going to get a media deal thrown together. It just wasn't going to happen. Too many priorities that were competing with each other, and that wasn't long to last. So I think I like this new A4 that we're sitting on with the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC. Well, I'm not sure that the ACC is the most healthy conference. At least it's still together. And I think consolidation, at the end of the day, a lot of people are moaning about it. I'm not one of them. I think consolidation really makes it so the best schools can compete. And if you get left out, you need to be brought back in. I'm just going to put a plug in for Washington State and Oregon State. I want them in a power conference. I want them in the Big 12. They don't deserve what's happened to them, and they shouldn't get left behind.
And the way Arizona State did when they was trying to expand those 4 teams, right. Arizona State sort of drug their feet and acted like they didn't want to come, right. And said some somewhat nasty things about going to the Big 12. If I was the Big 12 at that point, I would have went after Oregon State, because to me, they're just a better fan base, in my opinion.
And, 100%.
And a better program overall, with seems like a brighter future as well. Jonathan Smith seems like a great coach, an up-and-coming coach that's sort of like a quarterback whisperer, I guess you could say, right?
Absolutely. Oregon State's loaded for bear. I mean, them and Washington State play this weekend, and whoever comes out of that is going to be really a foot up on everybody else in the conference. If Colorado can go in and beat Oregon, that will change what the conference dynamics is going to look like. So the Pac-12 this year, it's ironic. It's going to be the most competitive that it's been in probably 30 years since Washington was nationally relevant and almost after they won their national championship. And it's been that long. I come from Washington State. I grew up in Pac-12 country. I'm a Washington and Washington State fan, so I know the history of that conference. And it's ironic. This is going to be their strongest year in a generation and a half, and next year it's going to be gone.
That's right. And I think actually the Pac-12 is older than the SEC, maybe even the Big 10. It's a pretty old conference, right?
When it was the Pac-8, yes, that's right.
It was formed in 1915?
Yeah, it's over 100 years old. I can't remember the year, but yeah, it was the Pacific Coast Conference something, and it changed names 3 or 4 times. It was a Pac-6, then a Pac-8, Pac-10, and then Pac-12. So
Mike Happy says, me and Outlaw had an issue before, but I'm still here. Enjoy him and the program. Well, Mike, what fun is it if you don't have disagreements? It's not no fun if everybody agrees,
yeah.
Me and him, we sort of disagree a little bit on con time, but, that's why it's a healthy discussion. You can have a discussion and move on. At least most people can. Some people can't, but that's what it's all about. It's getting the common Joes and the common Sallys in the know up in here, because I think we know just as much as those talking heads out there.
Yeah, you know what? I would encourage people to, if you're watching shows that have 2 people or more that agree with each other on everything, I would maybe steer you away from those for entertainment purposes. They might have good information, and I don't want to talk bad about any other social media or YouTube personality. But if you want a little spice in your life, go to shows where people disagree, maybe even disagree often. I've seen you disagree with people, Outlaw, and I think that's very healthy. On my program, we're constantly disagreeing, but that's what that does is it makes the conversation more rich, and it leaves it up to the viewer to decide what their opinion is instead of having people preaching to you and telling you what to believe.
That's right. The whole preaching and talking down to thing is why, a lot of these national media talking heads don't like YouTube, because we're taking a piece of their pie, man. We're giving a voice to the common Joe and the common Sally in the know. And Sergeant Pickle says, my bowl prediction is the bowl system is reorganized to make an NIT tournament of sorts, and the main playoff expands to 16 teams.
I think it goes to 16 teams. I don't think it's an NIT thing, though. Unless he means it's NIT in the way they pick the teams that are going to contribute to that. Pickles, you and I will have to talk about that on Twitter by what you mean by that. But I definitely think it goes to 16 teams in 2026. I definitely think that probably the A4 conferences all have the presidents, the conference champions get inserted. I think the G5 keeps 1, and the 7 will be at-large bids.
I really like the whole setup where you actually get to have a couple of games on campus. I think that's pretty sweet.
I think that's a great idea. Earn your way to a home game. Yep, I agree.
It gives you a reason to keep playing the regular season, unlike the NFL, I guess. Well, the NFL could do the same. They could be fighting for home field advantage as well.
Right.
Cuz Corners jumped in here. We was just talking you up, man. Big 12 Mafia. Big 12 Mafia was plugging you pretty hard a while ago, so
that's,
get some BYU
that's
people
what we do. That's what we do. We support each other.
Yeah, BYU people are so passionate and such a large base, man. I have to try to tap into them, brother.
Well, I'm glad I'm one of those guys for you. I look forward to doing this more often.
Yeah, Cuz definitely recommended you. So,
oh, did he? Well, thank you, Justin. I really appreciate that. I would tell anybody that's listening to follow Coos Corner before you follow me.
Yeah, Cuz does some real good interviews, and he does conference real line.
Absolutely.
He's a big West Virginia guy. If you can get past that Mountaineer crap, then you'll be doing all right.
I tell you what, everybody was thinking West Virginia was going to be a doormat. I had them, I think, at 4 or 5 wins, but I have them beating BYU at home. And I think that they could be a sneaky pick to win 8 or 9 games. The way that their conference schedule works out, they don't have the worst draw in the world. And think about of all the teams in the Big 12 that are down. Oklahoma State, I would say, well, Iowa definitely. I think Baylor's definitely off the bit. You could definitely make a claim that Kansas State isn't going to be as good as, even though they're well coached and they recruited well, they looked weak this last weekend. So, I think it's going to be a lot more competitive than people think.
It looks like Pittsburgh is going to be the doormat. I mean, they done lost to Cincinnati and to West Virginia, and Cincinnati lost to Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, they did not do good against the Big 12 this year. That's for sure.
Speaking of which, Oklahoma does play a road game at Cincinnati. I thought that might be a test for them, but since they lost to Miami of Ohio, a lot of Oklahoma fans were mad that they didn't feel like they was getting respect in the polls. You know, Alabama's still ahead of them, and Alabama ain't looked very good. LSU still ahead of them with a loss. And I sort of agree they maybe should have been a little bit higher. But these next two games, you know, with Cincinnati and Iowa State, I just don't know if they can get the respect that they want out of those two games, because Iowa State lost to the Ohio Bobcats last week. And so I don't know if they can really get pushed in the top 10 unless they beat Texas or at least get close to Texas. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not saying they'd be in the top 10. What I'm saying is they can be a sneaky pick to beat teams that might otherwise think they'll beat them. I thought Neil Brown might be fired by the middle of the season. That's not going to happen. I think they've played good enough that he's probably going to keep his job unless they fall off the table in the next 8 weeks. I think that team's going to stay together, which means the longer you keep your coach, if you have the organization doing well, the better your program is going to be, because that continuity is huge in college athletics.
Sergeant Pickles says BYU could generally win that game. Playing in Utah is tough. Let me ask you something. Is the elevation up there, is that really a real deal? Is that something that really affects teams?
It is. Yeah, there's several examples I can point to you, but Baylor last year was probably the best example. They came in and they were on a roll. They've been playing well. They won the league the year before. They had pretty much everybody back. And BYU actually could have beat them by more points than they did. And I think that's because the elevation, what it does is it's not hard in the first and second quarter. But in the third quarter, especially if it's at heat or really cold, what starts to happen, and I experienced this myself when I moved here, is your heart rate will speed up, which then leads to perspiration, which then it's such a dry climate here that sheds off. That perspiration doesn't stay on your body, which means if you're in a hot climate, it's the temperature's hot, your body doesn't cool like it's supposed to. If it's in winter, like in November when Oklahoma comes and you sweat, it doesn't go away. It doesn't wick away. So it stays on your body, makes your body colder. So between loss of oxygen, I want to say it's like 15% less oxygen than elevation. And what it does, the changes to your body, it stresses people out. It's much easier to go from elevation to no elevation than to go from, say, sea level and come up to 4,000 or 5,000 feet.
And it sure stressed Florida out, right?
Yeah, that's another. BYU beat Miami the exact same way, 3 decades ago. These teams that are especially in the Florida Panhandle, places that aren't elevation at all, like zero elevation, they're the ones that struggle the most. That's why I'll tell you, UCF, when they come up here, they might have a great team, but they better do conditioning before they come up, because that would be a tough road trip for them.
Yeah, that Utah win over Florida is looking mighty good since they beat Tennessee, right?
They are. I actually had Florida winning 4 games for the entire year after Utah beat them. I thought they looked horrible. The next week, they looked really bad, and then they come out and beat Tennessee. So I'm not sure if it means that Florida's that much better week to week, or Tennessee's just not as good and they were overrated. We'll find out.
They didn't just beat Tennessee barely either. They was up on them 26-7 at one time.
I know. It was shocking what happened there.
I just think the SEC's down in general, because
I agree with that.
LSU got beat pretty soundly by Florida State. Texas A&M got beat pretty badly. Alabama got handled by Texas.
Right.
Georgia struggled with UT Martin. Tennessee struggled with Austin Peay. It's just and of course, BYU went down to Arkansas and beat them. So
that's a tough place to play. As an Alabama fan, you know how difficult it is to play in Fayetteville. That's not your average road trip. It's tough for anybody to go in there and win. So,
it's hard to get there. It's hard to get to Fayetteville. They don't have an airport. So.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
I don't think they got not a real airport. It's sort of like Tuscaloosa. We got an airport for small planes.
Right.
Well, if you come in on.
Uh-oh. Is that me or is that you?
I think it's, I don't know. We just lost connection.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. Anyways, keep going.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
But I lost my train of thought now. I don't even know what I was saying.
You were talking about flights into Tuscaloosa and Fayetteville.
Oh, yeah. It's an hour drive from Birmingham. If you're coming in on a big plane, you have to get your Uber for an hour or rent your rental car, because it's an hour from Birmingham to come down here.
Right. I think Sergeant Pickles' comment here is spot on. The Huskies are used to coming to Utah. They used to play BYU out of conference all the time. Every 2 or 3 years, they would come to Provo. And then obviously they've been in conference with Utah for the last 13 years. So they know not only do you have to travel up a day earlier than you normally would, but your conditioning better be on point or you could get boat raced.
Yeah, because is Boise State, are they in the elevation thing as well or no?
Yeah, they're sitting a little bit less. They're like 3,500. So they're about 1,000 less than BYU and Utah are.
And Boise State had some nasty stuff to say after they lost to Central Florida 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
Chris
I
had
don't
on the
know.
show. I'm like, I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm like, maybe they're a little jealous because they're not getting a Power 5 invite or something. I don't know.
It may be they think they're more worthy than UCF is. They were one of the original BCS busters. They earned their reputation in the 2000s. But honestly, for the last 5 or 6 years, Boise has not been what they've been historically in the last 20 years. Something has happened in that at that school that they're not playing as well as they normally do. They're still recruiting fairly well, but something's dropped off in that program. I think Boise State deserves to be in a power league. In fact, I think 3 conferences with 24 teams, 4 conferences with 20 or 16 teams, 4 conferences with 16 teams, and you could include a lot of schools that are currently out, which is a time for a different show. But I mean, Boise State, San Diego State, UConn, Memphis, let's see, who am I missing? Memphis and Tulane. These are all schools that they play good sports. In fact, I would put all of them ahead of SMU getting in. Yeah. And yet, because of the way realignment is now, conferences needing money, you basically sell membership to a school that honestly hadn't earned it, and that's sad.
Yeah, back in the day, SMU was a powerhouse, but
they were absolutely.
And now that they finally got back to the big time, maybe that was a bad situation. Now, SMU probably deserved to be on probation for a very long time, but I think the death penalty was a little bit of an overreaction by the NCAA.
It was. It was.
You mentioned Tulane. Tulane is in the New Orleans market. Tulane also used to be in the SEC. Yeah, I bet they wish they hadn't left now, but
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
so they could absolutely do it. If you guys don't mind, jump out of the chat, hit the like and share button. Also, you'll see these people with badges. That's the Outlaw Posse membership. If you want to join the Outlaw Posse and get your 4 horsemen shout out periodically, as well as maybe be the comment of the day, just hit the join button next to the subscribe button. It's $2.99 a month, 75 cents a week, and you'll get your badge. You'll be deputized, and you'll get all those perks. Also, we have a little donation button down here as well. I keep forgetting about. You can a little $sign. You can hit that and highlight your comment if you want to get it pushed to the top as well. But I feel like I've taken enough of your time today, brother. You want to go ahead and give a shout out to plug some few things before we get out of here?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thanks for the invitation, Outlaw. This has been awesome, and we need to do it again as often as you want. I'll get you on my shows, and it's a great network that we're building, all these social media people, and we're all creators in our own right. So I tip my hat to what you've built, and I just want to encourage everybody that's watching this show, if you're not already subscribed to this program. Follow Outlaw on Twitter. And, we put in a lot of time and energy, and we almost don't get anything out of it ourselves. So if you have the facility and you want to, please subscribe to Outlaw's shows. I just really quick, I'm doing a show tonight at 8:30 Eastern time. Will be a Big 12 Mafia show. We're going to preview Week 4 games. We're going to talk some Colorado, some Pac-2 news stuff. And then I think there's a couple other news items. We call it, I want to make sure I get the name right, Wide Open Wednesday. So I invite you to come to that show tonight at 8:30 Eastern. Other than that, just follow me on Twitter and, do what you can to support our shows. I really appreciate it, Outlaw.
All right, brother. And I just want to reiterate on something you just said that I wanted to, talk about. You said that we do this for little or nothing, which is true, which shows you that we actually love what we're doing.
Right.
We love it because we're one of the common Joes and Sals in the know. And we feel like we know just as much as those media talking heads, right, brother?
Absolutely true. Yes, there's no doubt about it. And I just want to tell everybody out there, all the support you provide to all the creators that are in this YouTube space for college football, they all appreciate you guys paying attention and enjoying their content. I know I do.
All right, brother. I'm gonna let you get out of here. I
Okay.
appreciate your time.
All right. No problem. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great day, and maybe I'll see you tonight. Peace out.
That's right. And KMCA to all the other teams.
Bye-bye.